welcome you to another encounter. Today is holiday, and we are using the holiday to still share experience. And we want to express our thanks to every one of you for participating in these sessions. Today, we have a presentation to be made by Dr. John Bernard Yorke. He has a 30-year experience in highway and transportation engineering. Dr. Yorke completed BSc at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He also holds MSc in Birmingham, UK, and also PhD at the same University of Birmingham, UK. He is expert in highway engineering and transportation, project management, and strategic planning. Today, Dr. Yorke is going to present to us on the topic on transportation policy and planning, transport policy and planning. As I said, he's an expert in that area. And on that note, I want to welcome Dr. Yorke to give his presentation. Dr. Yorke, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you to all the eminent people and engineers and planners on this platform. I think, as you said, my topic is going to look at transport policy and planning. This area of transport policy has been something that has been an issue with the sector, but in 2008, the government developed the first ever transport policy for Ghana. Either to, when we prepare projects, we support it with transport papers, policy papers that we use to support these investments. And then these are requirements that these development partners and investment agencies will request of you before they will be able to approve your investment portfolio for you. And this is what we realized, and in 2008, the first ever policy was developed for the country. As I said, it was necessary because at that time, there was no direction in ensuring that various modes are managed under, modes were being managed under the various sectors. And therefore, it was necessary for us to be able to get this document to be able to help us have a common investment platform in terms of intermodal coordinating body to ensure that we have a seamless transport system. There were duplication of effort in the development without ensuring that the agreed standard and specifications were followed. Typical among these things were the Ministry of Food and Agriculture undertaking transport infrastructure activities without any recourse to the Ministry of Roads and Highways. There were also no serious consultation with respect to engaging with the dependents of the transport system as their means to an end. So the policy was very necessary to be able to help us to be able to look at all these aspects of the providing transport services and also the infrastructure aspects. So the document as it is was developed based on a process and policy outcome resulting in a government-approved document which was published. In fact, you may prepare some of these things, but if government does not approve it, it will not necessarily be a policy that can be used by the country. So within this policy, they set out the government intentions and the overall objective for the transport sector. It also helps us to get the approaches to be adopted by the sector in response to the conditions and the needs of society as a whole, and the transport users and the suppliers of the infrastructure and services. So this document has to look at those who depend on the infrastructure, those who are providing the infrastructure itself, and then those who are running services on the transport infrastructure. So it takes care of everybody and all those who are actually captured, the captives of the transport system. It looks at all of them. Now, since it's a public formulated document, it must be based on intensive consultation among the various stakeholders at all levels, and also take into account the indigenous knowledge and the user experiences, which may not be readily available to the managers of the transport system. What is happening is that there are a lot of information with the indigenes, especially in areas that we are trying to put in transport infrastructure. A typical example is the road system, whereby you would go to an area and then you want to put a drainage infrastructure there. The indigenous people there will be able to tell you that this place, it floods maybe every 15 years since a child will have observed this thing. To them, they will see it as maybe a deity or something trying who is annoying. But to us, the engineers, we take it as the return period of these floods or these storms. And therefore, it helps us to develop the hydraulic structures to be able to cater for this flooding, and also to help us to do proper and more responsive flood analysis in such locations. So the indigenous knowledge and experiences of the users of our facility are very, very important. This document also, as we prepare the transport policy, it must also be consistent with global and regional conventions, agreements, the national development agenda. At times we come out with Vision 2020, accelerated development. All these things has to be taken into consideration, and also the existing laws of the country must also be taken into consideration when we are coming out with this policy with respect to the governance for the government. There is the need to have a comprehensive review of the existing conventions and agreements so as to avoid conflict. There are instances whereby government has actually agreed or made declaration or supported some convention in the past. So there's a need for us to take all these things into consideration. There's a typical example I would like to give about this Amati declaration, which actually was to help all seaport countries give access to landlord countries with respect to their import and exports. So if Ghana is part of these, had made this declaration, and therefore we as a sector cannot, even though we're not there, we may have to take these things into consideration when we are developing the policy. So in the development of the policy, we also would take into consideration ownership. There have been instances policies have been developed as a document without the stakeholders owning it. This is because in such instances, consultation had been very poor and they don't know whether any of said documents exist. So it is very difficult to disseminate these documents to the people who have not been part in the development of this policy. So consultation is very, very, very necessary when we are developing these policies. It is therefore an important document, enabling, if the consultation had been good, it enables the stakeholders to know what government of the day intends to achieve with public finance, and subsequently hold them to account for their successes and failures in the transport sector. Because in Ghana, as we know, whether we take loan or we don't take loan, or we're on a consolidated fund or not, it is the taxpayer who is going to pay for all these loans that we've had. And therefore, there's a need for us to be able to account to them properly within the governance system. So the governance framework is very, very, very important and must also respond to the various arms of government. As you can see from the slide, the transport policy document is a way for the transport sector communicating to the executive, and then the executive communicating to Parliament, that's legislature. Now, Parliament uses this transport document as a means to monitor and also audit the performance of the sector. So where there's no transport policy, it makes it very, very difficult for the legislature, for that matter, Parliament, to be able to hold the sector accountable for the things that they've agreed to do in the policy document. And it also held the executive, the existing government, to be able to also relate very well with the Parliament when it comes to the transport sector. So this is the framework that I've shown. You see that for the transport sector, we prepare the policy document. Is the executive that must approve. When they approve of it, they share it with Parliament. Parliament will now use the transport sector policy document to be able to monitor our performance and audit it as well. So in all the issues that were in developing the transport policy, the stakeholder consultation, especially on the demand side workshop, with respect to education, with respect to agri, with respect to health, etc., is very, very also necessary. And then the planning, the transport planning agencies within the country is also something that has to be looked at, because in developing a policy, consultation is very, very important. Nationwide consultation at the regional levels with respect to the ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as the MMDs, that's the Metropolitan Municipal District Assembly system, they will all have to be consulted. Then they would help you come out with the issues relating to their transport system in the various areas that they are operating. Then House of Chiefs. The chiefs, if you know, in our environment, the chiefs always make a submission to government that they should provide them with their rules. So the House of Chiefs are also supposed to have an input in the consultation process. The security agencies, now the demand and supply side, those who provide demand our transport for use, and those on the supply side, the contractors and the agencies who by their activities are supposed to look at this sector. Now the political parties, if you develop a policy without involving all the political parties operating at that time, it will be very difficult for any political party to own it. So in the consultation, there's a need for you to also engage with the political parties, invite them to be with you at all times, the professional bodies, the Institution of Engineers, planners. Now, people with disabilities, civil service organization, people with disability, the PWDs, they have various sector, representative bodies, which you have to engage with them as well. So, and then the civil society organization, the private enterprise foundation, and others. All these people are very, very needed in developing a very responsive policy. So if you look at the scheme of things, the policy framework itself is what I've shown here. If you are developing a policy, you need to first look at the national visions and goals. So in some time past, we have Vision 2020, which was supposed to bring us to middle income status. That vision in developing the policy must be looked at. You looked at international agreements and conventions, which you have gone to agree. It will also have to be inform the policy development. And then sector policies, strategies and plans, productive and the demand side, as I've just enumerated, they all have to make an input. So you need to engage them to know their specific needs and everything that they have to do to be able to come out with a very comprehensive policy. And then the existing transportation issues, which are known to you as well, they will have to be informed. So if you looked at the input in the developing of the transport policy, you realize that the sector policy strategies and plans from the various sectors, apart from the Ministry of Transport and then other subsectors, you realize that all these people information are needed to come out with a comprehensive. In our case, because the transport sector has been subdivided, for example, we have the Ministry of Railway Development, we have the Ministry of Roads and Highways, we have the Ministry of Transport sector, which is looking at the maritime sector and also have jurisdiction over road transport services subsectors. So all of them would have to come into being. They all have to participate in the consultation and the discussions. And out of that, we can now evolve a master plan. Without these things, there's no master plan that can be prepared to be used for a country without actually having a policy as its input. So this is how the whole framework works. You have the National Development Vision. Now you come out with the transport policy. The transport policy must be based on themes, goals, objectives, and strategies. So this is what the extent of the policy would have to capture. Now it is this policy that is used to prepare the transport master plan. And out of the transport master plan, the agencies will now be using to prepare their short and medium term plans. And then the short and medium term plans will feed into the programming and then of the project at annual levels and at short and medium term. So a typical policy framework is looking at the thematic areas. The thematic areas are areas of focus established from the reviews and consultation, the stakeholder consultations. So when you engage with all the stakeholders and you talk about the issues, they will tell you everything. So when you can do all this engagement, and it can take you about 3 to 6 months to be able to do a very thorough stakeholder engagement, and then will help you to come out with the various themes under which the various policy goals, objectives, and the strategies will be prepared. Now, the policy goal would also, based on the consultation, will help you to come out with a more realistic goals, which actually defines our desire and where we want to be in future as a country with respect to our transport system. And then the policy goal can only be achieved based on an objective, which is the set of principles and processes that we must adhere to be able to achieve this goal. And then this goal objective under the broad methods or activities is the strategies that you put in place. For example, the objective of cost recovery in the road fund, in the setting up of the road fund, one of the strategies was to use the fuel levy to be able to recover cost in terms of maintenance cost that has been done to maintenance cost. That, I mean, money that has been spent on maintenance can only be recovered through the fuel levy. About 80%, 90% of the money that goes into the road fund. The strategy was to use cost recovery and use the fuel levy as a means to be able to achieve that. So these are the policy framework that is needed. Now, the current transport policy, from the extensive consultation and then with stakeholders, the review of these conventions, and we were able to come out with 10 thematic areas that inform the current Ghana transport policy. And these are the themes. One, we realize that wherever you go, people want transport. So one of the thematic areas was transport for all, to ensure that everybody, irrespective of where you are, where you stay, so far as you are in the country, you have the right to be given transport. So one of the thematic areas is transport for all. Ghana also wants to see itself as the transportation hub for West Africa. It's also an issue so that Ghana, as the gateway to the West African sub-region, the transport hub team was also evolved based on the consultation. sustainable transport, in order to ensure that the transport system will not break down, but it can sustain the current demand and then the future demand as well. So sustainable transport too was a thing that people really talked about it. And then we talked about the public and private investment into transport infrastructure. Currently, we have the PPP, the public-private partnership with respect to providing transport infrastructure. Government has come out with the PPP law. So we do this to make sure that wherever you come, whatever way you want to participate, the policy has made provision for you. Now, integrated and harmonized transport planning. I think I've talked about that. Currently, because it's in substance, at times we operate, there's no coordinating agency helping the various transport subsectors to be able to bring all their plans together, to be able to have an integrated and intermodal plan. We don't have anything like that. So it was another thing. Then the legal mandate for the implementation of the policy and plans. What we've come to realize during this consultation were that because these things are not backed by legal instruments, any government who comes in, they look at it, they don't like your plans, they set it aside to do what they want. But if the legal mandate has been given with respect to implementation, in terms of how we've structured our plans over the years, then no government will come and say that I wouldn't continue what my previous government did, but I would do another. But if there's a legal framework that has protects these policies, it would have been a very good thing. Then we can see a systematic and an orderly development of our transport sector, because it is supported by law. Kenya is doing it, and Kenya is benefiting. So when there are medium, short, and medium-term programs, you see that it's gazetted. It's gazetted. So you know that your road would happen in year 3. It's no politician who will have to come and tell you that, oh, when I come, I'll do my. He knows that the plans that the government has put in place, the legal protection, make sure that within that period, he will get his road. So there wouldn't be this agitation, and the people will be informed properly. It will not be based on promises, but it will be based on actual gazetted plans. And if the time comes and the government is not able to do it, they can hold the government accountable. So this is what and it also helps us with enforcement of rules, regulations, and standards as well, research and development. We've done a lot of research work, and we are not implementing it. So the transport policy has looked at this area, and then developing the human resource capacity needed, not only for those of us working in the various agencies, but what about the construction industry, those who are actually engaged to supply the road, the transport infrastructure. They also have to be, their capacity will also have to be improved. So we looked at all these things, and it was one of the themes that we had to also look at. And then application of new technologies in transport was also now, because of the IT, there are so many technologies. Well, how do we harness it for the benefit of the transport sector? So the themes that for Ghana, for the Ghana's condition, we have 10 thematic areas under which the policy, transport policy has been developed. Now, a typical example of the theme, if you take the transportation policy, with the transport for all, within the framework of the policy, there's supposed to be a goal, there's supposed to be policy objectives, and what strategies must be put in place to be able to achieve the transport for all policy. One of the goals that we say, create an accessible, affordable, reliable, and effective and efficient transport system that meets user needs, including people with disabilities, the PWDs, in conformity with UN Article 20, as stated here. So all these reviews have to be looked at to be able to make sure that the policy does not exclude anybody, or as a country, what we have told these international bodies, we are making sure that we put them in the various sectors. Then develop a reliable transport system which is affordable and accessible to all users. I mean, under the theme of transport for all, people should not be shortchanged or should not be limited with respect to access to transport because he cannot afford it. So all alternatives would also have to create a sustainable and efficient, effective transport that meets the user needs. There are transport systems that we have created that the PWDs are not able to use. No toilet for the PWDs. The blind when they get to a transport station. So in our transport policy, all these things have been looked at. In fact, if you look at the policy direction, we have also stated the policy, the kind of discipline, what we have to adhere to be able to achieve this policy. The strategies like preparation of the road master plan, which has up to now, we don't have a road master plan. And this thing will have to also be looked at. We have to develop the road system. It must be preceded with socioeconomic and feasibility studies to be able to look at the needs of the environment or wherever the infrastructure is going. We have to improve the management of the road fund to a second generational fund. Currently, if it is a second generation, it should be autonomous from the road agencies. And therefore, they would be able to now look at these plans and then policy to be able to support the development of the road sector. I will go forward because of timing. Now, with the development of the policy, it gives the basis for well-informed planning to take off. Without that policy, it will be very difficult to take off in terms of planning. So the policy actually is the precursor to effective planning. So if you want to plan your system well, make sure that you understand what has been put in the transport policy. So the policy would give you the information that you need to be able to have effective planning. And under planning, the National Development Planning Commission has prepared, for example, a 40-year development, which includes a 30-year transport infrastructure master plan. I'm sure a lot of people are not aware of this, but if you look at the 40-year development plan that is currently in place, and as I am saying, this plan, the 40-year plan, should have been supported with a legal framework so that all those who have made input, and for that matter, the transport sector, we would have a clear agenda in the development for the next 30 years of our transport system. The master plan must take into account the existing situation, the goals, and achieving a full-fledged upper income country status. So if you looked at this, currently we say we are low income status, but if you looked at the master plan, the 40-year development plan, it is that which it has been the aim or the vision is to be a full middle income country. The master plan also gives investment priorities and the preparation of the short and medium term plans and programs to execute the master plan. So this is how the flow is. So if you looked at this, you realize that if you have the policy now informs the preparation of a master plan. The master plan preparation is dependent on analysis of demand focus, demand in terms of shipment, demand in terms of traffic, the socioeconomic, financial environment, evaluation. All these things would have to be done. And then priority project and then investment plan. So if you look at the 40-year development plan, under which we have a 30-year transport infrastructure plan, you will see that all these analyses have been done. I will give you a gist of how these things have worked. Now, with the master plan, the agencies can now prepare their short to medium term plans. It is a subsector, a subset of the master plan. The master plan cannot be prepared in its whole. So you put them into slices. That's what we at times we call the strategic plans. We put them into slices. It could be 3 years, it could be 5 years. The short term, 3, 5, medium term, 5 years of the master plan. And out of these plans, you do your programming, the annual programs for that period of time that you are put in the agency plans, and then you get your projects. So this is the clear framework upon which the planning has to be done. Now, the master plan, the analysis of the transport demand forecasting is a very, very important thing. So in terms of developing the master plan, you need people with that expertise and understanding how to do these projects. So you do that, and a typical situation, you looked at the current situation. In fact, when the transport policy was, master plan was being prepared, it looked at the then condition of the network and then see where we want to achieve, what we want to achieve. It looked at the road safety issues, and it came out with all these things. And this would help us to be the basis, the existing infrastructure of the rail was also assessed. You looked at the total rail network was only in 947 kilometers. You looked at all the rolling stock operations. We looked at the water transport. We have two deep sea port transport ports. We have the water lake transport infrastructure. Then we have the cross ferry facilities as well. So we looked at all these things. We looked at aviation. Aviation had no long-term plans. We looked at how it will be addressed to make the aviation the hub under the theme of making Ghana as the transportation hub of West Africa. We looked at it in all those things and looked at the existing situation and how these things must follow. Now with this thing, we realized that the port has a master plan for Takoradi and Tema. The railway has a master plan. The inner water transport has a master plan. There's also a master plan limited to Gama and Kumasi metropolitan area with respect to public transport system. Then for the road sector, we don't have an integrated master plan for feeder, trunk, and urban roads. Rather, the agencies have long-term plans, but they have not put it into as an integrated plan. But as I said, the aviation plan is yet to be prepared. Now with this master plan, now you can have the medium term, the 3-year, the annual budget, and then the procurement plan. So this is how the flow is. This is how the flow is. Then you'll be able to prepare these things. Okay. Now we want to become a middle status income. How do we plan to get there? So now you looked at what a middle income country, what is its infrastructure? Look at the South Africa. If you want to have a track, look at the track length. They have about 31,000 kilometers. In Ghana, we have only 947 kilometers, but we want to become an upper middle income country. So the proposal, the number of track that we have to improve in terms of railway infrastructure is 4,000 based on our population. So all these things must inform the plans. Now you looked at the road sector. We want to be a middle income country. Currently, if you look at our population, middle income country, fully middle income by the year 2047. The current situation, if you look at our densities, where the road density with respect to the land size is 0.29. But if you want to be a middle income country like South Korea, we have to increase the density to about 1.06. So all these things would have to now inform your planning. Expressways. In Ghana, for example, we don't have expressways. If you compare ourselves to Korea, Korea have over 4,000 kilometers of expressways. So now we have the regional corridors trying to develop that one. So all this information will help you to be able to have a very systematic development. Now, DHA has this plan. We need about almost for the next 30 years, about $24 billion to be able to develop our this thing. Vehicle population, we are looking at a vehicle population now as based on our, I think my time is running out, so let me skip this one. But the public transport system, all these plans have been prepared. If you go to other countries, we see these routes, the bus rapid transit system. We prepared all these things, and these must be carried out and help us to develop our systems. The seaports, for example, if you compare yourself with Qatar, they have about, their shoreline is just almost the same as Ghana. Currently, we have 2 seaports. We need to add about 2 more seaports to it, and I think Qatar and other areas are coming up to ensure that we achieve this as well. All these things are going on, and in terms of the development of these seaports, we have the phase 1 and the phase 2. From now up to the year 2043, there are phases, and all these things have been prepared. These are the plans that will help you to prepare your short and medium term plans as well. So if you look at the MPS, they developed the phase, what has been circled here is the phase 2 that has to be put in place from now up to the year 2043. The inland transport infrastructure, the water lake, they need the amount of money, about 500 million. This lake transport system has also been developed. Plan has been developed. We have the Buankrai Inland Port, which is about 400 acres of land acquired. Feasibilities have been completed. Thanks to the current government, the development has also started. So it means gradually we are also on course with trying to do put in place the needed transport infrastructure to be able to achieve that vision of an upper middle income country. So these are the costs in terms of aviation infrastructure that has to be put in place. Currently, DHA has a master plan. We've now imposed the master plan on the railway master plan. And then you'll be able to see where the roads are, because when you come out of the rail, you need the road system to continue your journey to your logical destination. You shouldn't be stranded. When you come out of the rail, there's no road transport system. So the intermodal system is what has been prepared here now. So now with that, you have the policy, you have the master plans, you have the agency plans, the short and medium term, and that informs the project level. That's you do your feasibility, preliminary design, detailed design, BOQ, contract document, and then you use it to do proper competitive procurement. Then we can have value for money. So from the policy side all the way to the planning side, it will help us to achieve the objectives we set, and also at a more cost-effective manner by doing all these things before you start there. But the challenges currently that we have in the transport system, most of the plans prepared, as I said, is not backed by legal instrument, lack of government commitment in continuation of work done by previous governments, the current policy and planning being practiced is limited to only the project level. That is doing feasibility, preparation of detailed designs, BOQ, and tender document. But I believe that the policy and planning section of the various transport subsectors must look at the long term, the medium term, take the transport policy as its inspiration to do these plans, so that it will enable us to present ourselves better when we are engaging multilateral and bilateral donor agencies, and therefore to help them to be able to adhere to the plans that have been put in place within the framework, the legal framework, protecting these plans. Then there's lack of dissemination of transport policies. The policy, as we prepare, at times is only left to the road agencies and the sector agencies. We don't disseminate the information to the public so that they will know their roles and their rights and what they can ask for and what they cannot ask for within a given period. So all these things would have to also be put in place. As I said, there's no common master transport plan. That's making coordination among the various subsectors extremely difficult, because they somehow appear to be planning in silos. And these things would have to stop to ensure that we have a better integrated transport system. Thank you.